Hello. I'm honored to introduce the Ogilvy-sponsored panel, Where We Stand, New Insight into Our Industry. Since the beginning, Ogilvy has been a proud sponsor of the 3% Conference. Diversity has always been and will be part of Ogilvy's DNA. We have a global goal of achieving 50% gender equality in leadership ranks in less than 5 years. And in fact, Ogilvy USA leadership team is the most diverse in the company with over 50% women. At Ogilvy, diversity and inclusion are not just buzzwords. They're part of the very fabric of our culture. As agencies struggle to compete, the pursuit of diversity in the agency world is more important than ever to drive creativity and innovation. In this new era, we're learning that equal representation is key to creating insightful and meaningful marketing campaigns to drive the business of our clients. The world has changed. Our industry has changed. Today, Kat Gordon, founder of the 3% Movement, and Vanessa Reed, Director of Marketing and New Business Strategy for the 3% Movement, will discuss the findings of their year-long study of agencies to gain insight into where things really stand, and will have you asking, how do we compare? Hope you all enjoy this session. Thank you.
Good morning. We're super excited about this session. The name of this conference, the very name of this conference, comes from a piece of research that most people don't know was done by a graduate student. It was a dissertation. And the 3% number is based on how many creative directors in communication arts were female over a 30-year period. And shockingly, that was the metric this industry has relied on for so many years. So for a long time, I've been saying we need a better ruler. We really need to know how represented women and people of color are in advertising. So we set out to find out about that this year. And we're going to go through it today. I want to introduce everyone to Vanessa Reed. She is our Director of Marketing and New Business Strategy. And we want to make it super clear that this is the first installment in an ongoing body of research, and we are committed to growing that data so it's more reflective of what's really happening. Okay, where we stand.
Alrighty. So for years, 3% has heard 3 questions from 3 different groups. From agencies, how do we hire and retain the best talent? From talent, where should I work? And from brands, what agencies are tapping diverse teams to reach our consumers? So we realized these answers are obviously hard to find, so we set out to find them ourselves. We asked dozens of agencies. I spoke to every single one of them on the phone many, many times. And they ranged from every large holding company to small independent creative shops. And they gave us insight into their female leadership numbers, their agency policies and programs. And we're going to walk you through, of all the research that we did, we're going to walk you through the top 7 takeaways that we pulled out of the research. And we did this over the course of the last year, so from 2016 to 2017. And it's really given us a much needed current look into what it's like in American ad agencies for women, for people of color, and for unrepresented communities. As Kat mentioned, it's just the beginning, and we'll get into it at the end, but we are still inviting and we encourage other agencies to get involved, because we know that some of the agencies, I'm sure, that reached out are aware of our mission and what we do, and are maybe performing a little bit better on these measures. So we want to make sure that we continue to do this and invite more people, and even get agencies that are a little bit earlier on in their journey for diversity. So, without that, let's get straight into it.
This is the good news that I hope all of you are excited to hear. We saw that 29% of women were creative directors. Woohoo! Now, as Vanessa noted, the agencies that participated, while we did represent every holding company and different sized agencies, They're likely the ones that trust 3%. They've been to our event. They're probably a little further on their diversity journey, but we were incredibly heartened to see this number. It is so much better than 3%. It is so much better than 11.5%. In terms of executive leadership, 39% of executive roles were held by women. So, yeah. So we gave this a thumbs up. With the term cautious optimism about women rising to top positions, I think one thing that we have learned on the heels of the panel we just heard, the excellent panel, is that we have to be vigilant and that we cannot ever let up and keep our foot on the gas, because these rights and these advancements could go away, and we don't want that to happen.
Number 2, family unfriendly policies. We found that a few agencies do offer creative benefits for new parents, things like financial assistance for adoption, monetary baby bonuses when the baby's born, like food and gifts, or some sort of check, or actually extended job protection. But while 100% of agencies offered some length of paid maternity leave, only one agency offered above 12 weeks, and that actually went up to 16 weeks depending on the type of birth. But for paternity leave, if it was offered at all, it usually capped at 2 weeks. So this is something that, obviously, agencies, if they're not matching maternity and paternity leave, they're still not giving dads the credit and dads the leave that they actually deserve as fathers. So we found that while 48% offered only 2 weeks or less of paid paternity leave, and the other thing that most agencies were offering, but not all, was 84% of agencies offered some sort of breast pumping room and facilities for mothers, returning mothers. So we gave this a thumbs up / thumbs down. Some agencies are thinking creatively about their parents and working mothers, but men are still not supported as caregivers.
And I think where we really want to see this go, and where some agencies are demonstrating leadership, is to do away with these terms maternity and paternity and call it family leave, because families are made in all different configurations, and it doesn't make it a women's issue. All right. All right. Now we're going to talk about the importance of flexibility. Many agencies we found did have on-ramping processes to bring employees back to work on a part-time or flexible basis. We really heard a great leadership story last night from Y&R about that, and before they're returning to full-time status. And a couple of agencies offered a 4-week phase back to work program at 80% work, still at 100% pay. This is the time where you're sleep deprived and you're just, well, you know, you're pregnant.
Tired, very tired.
Yeah. So we found that 16% of agencies have formal job sharing, and 45% of agencies offer return to work or new parent on-ramping programs. Some had job share programs, but we found that there was a real discrepancy between the agencies that had a formal policy that was stated and defensible and agencies that made it on a case-by-case basis. And that case-by-case basis is a trap, because it puts the onus on the parent to negotiate it versus it being an assumptive thing that you're allowed and encouraged to take.
And I think that that's especially important when you're pregnant. Maybe it's your first child and you don't know what to expect. And so you have to go to your leadership team and talk to them about how much time you want to take off. And it's a scary thing to begin with. So if it's already put in place, then it's not something that you have to worry about.
Exactly, and I remember reading a story about an HR director who said very presumptively, see you in 12 weeks. Assumed you'd want the maximum, didn't make you negotiate anything. That's a very easy thing to do, and it probably is a huge sense of relief to the new mom or dad. So, this policy we give, again, a thumbs up, thumbs down. We really feel they're putting certain policies in place that are good, but they really need to not put the onus on the parent to ask them.
Making the unconscious conscious. Agencies are certainly beginning to understand that diversity and unconscious bias trainings are important in creating an equal workplace. But we're finding that if they actually exist in the workforce, that they're only happening a few times a year, and there's no follow-up policies or programs that go with it. And for some agencies, it was only offered at the holding company level, and that it was only a suggested practice for individual agencies. So we found that 55% of agencies offer diversity and unconscious bias training. We give this a thumbs down. We know that it's important, and by not addressing it, it doesn't address all of the various diversity-based issues within the workforce.
Let's talk wage. This is the thing that when I get asked by a reporter, what is the one thing you feel most passionate about? This is what I always say. You cannot claim to value people equally and pay them unequally. I'm surprised it's even legal, if it is. We have addressed this issue at 3% many times. Naveen Passy spoke about it yesterday on the ambassadors track. It is, I think, imperative for every single agency to do a wage audit. What we found was half of the agencies that we surveyed had done so, and of those, most of them did find some discrepancies and took immediate action to remedy it. This, we'll say, is a thumbs up. We do believe that agencies are valuing people equally and are ensuring they're paying them equally. And my hope is that there's pressure right now, and everyone sitting in this room that knows that their agency has not done so and is in a position. First of all, we're all in a position to ask for it. I was going to say that you're in a position to kind of kick it off. Go to your HR director. Say that this is something that you value. Make it happen.
Number 6, help wanted chief diversity and inclusion officers.
Yay.
Yeah, woohoo. Agencies, we found that agencies just do not see the value in having a chief diversity and inclusion officer. We found that only 16% of agencies actually have them, and if they do, for the most part, they're at the holding company level and not at the individual agency level. So obviously, by doing this, we are showing, or agencies are showing, that they just don't value and don't see the business reason for having this represented within their agency.
Yeah, I feel really passionately about this. It is true that you want to have a culture where everyone cares about diversity, but if you don't have one person who is dedicated to that 24/7, I think about this issue all the time. I'm so fascinated by diversity. I go to conferences, I read, and I am constantly amazed at what new knowledge there is to bring into agencies, share here with you. You need that person inside your agency. I feel really strongly that every agency should have a person in this position.
And it also doesn't matter what size the agency is. I think that was something else that came up in a lot of the discussions. A lot of agencies felt that they were too small or they were too large, and therefore it was everyone's responsibility. So it was missed on all levels, unfortunately.
And I can't think of any other business value issue that you would let not have someone championing in your company. This is a business value issue. You need to have a dedicated person. All right, so networks need to go beyond gender. 58% of agencies have a formal women's network. That's good news. Here's where it starts to fall apart. Only a third of agencies have networks to support their LGBTQ communities, and less than a quarter have networks for employees of color. This is not enough. Every single one of your employees needs to feel that they are represented, that they are heard, that there is a sense of community and support. This is unacceptable. Thumbs down. It is time for agencies to see beyond gender and support all forms of diversity inside of their walls.
Click again.
So this is where we stand as an agency today, as an industry today. We really, really feel strongly that we've just started to see what it's like inside agencies. We are so passionate for this research. We're so grateful to Ogilvy for underwriting this. We want to grow this database. So do you want to share how we can do that?
Yeah, we actually have launched our website. It is on the next slide, where if you want to find out how your agency compares, or actually do be part of the questionnaire that we shared with the agencies earlier this year, If you go to 3percentmovement.com/where-we-stand, there's a white paper that will be uploaded there, and you can take the survey and the questionnaire. It takes less than an hour. It's pretty straightforward, but we would love more agencies to participate so that we can get a more well-rounded body of research.
So we saved some time. We have about 12 minutes because we know this is a lot to digest. We're curious to know what you find surprising, what you find not surprising, what else you want us to study. So we're going to get out the dice and throw it around the room again, if it's available to us, the microphone. Do we have a mic? There it is. And just raise your hands if you have something you want to add or ask about or respond to. I see a hand there.
Here it comes. Ready?
And one here, okay.
Closer.
Not bad. How does this work? Hello? Okay.
Hello.
Hi, I was just curious if your research data takes into account things like healthcare. I know, especially given the current political climate, that access to healthcare is more and more important. And things like birth control or healthcare premiums, what percentage is employer paid versus employee supportive, and if that's part of your metrics.
We would love to cover that. That is something that was not on this initial round of research, but I think as we dig into this and continue to find more information from more agencies, it's certainly something that we would like to know more about.
Thank you for that note, that's where we need to go. Other questions? I see hands back in the back of the room. Go for it, Bronak. Way in the back.
How far can you throw?
Well, can't we get some help from the middle? There we go. Woo! Whoa. It bounces.
This was on Shark Tank, so it's kind of cool to see this in action. I don't know if anybody watches that show. So thank you for sharing your initial findings. What strikes me as being a New York City-based freelance creative director and adjunct in New York City is the Chief Diversity Officer stat. Because I also went to hear all the black people.
Yep.
And I'm thinking now that I'm here again, where the F are all of the chief diversity officers from those agencies? Where are they? There are a lot of agencies that have not been here. Hi. Hi. Where are all the other ones? But where are all of the agencies? There were so many agencies that are New York City based that were not at Here Are All the Black People that I don't even see here. Why?
Yeah.
Again,
No.
it's striking because your stat is, and from everyone here and being here last year, hearing what the sort of like, there was an underground movement with the creativity and color group that I was with.
Yep.
And I was crying in that session because I was like, why aren't you hiring my students? We're right down the block. All my students are from the New York City metropolitan area. I'm the only white person in my classroom. It's crazy.
Right.
So I feel like we're coming to that moment, that seismic shift is going to happen, and maybe it'll happen in January 1st of 2018, but
Yep.
I want to see the diversity officers, and I want to connect with them, and I want that pipeline to really keep moving. So thank you, in short.
Yes, yes.
But where are you?
And remember earlier when Kyle Cease talked about when he decided to go rejigger his career, and he sent those videos to all of the event planning people at colleges? You need to have people be able to find you, and not having a chief diversity officer for you to connect with is a problem of kind of proximity and connection. So I hear you. And yes, where are they? They need to exist. They need to be here. Another question.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
I have a question about the number of creative directors.
Yep.
Have you separated it by ECD and CCO? I'm just
Yes.
curious to what that number would be.
I believe 29% is any kind of creative directorship. Is that
Yes,
right?
yes.
Yes. But we do, and we're going to be sharing some certification information shortly. We get very granular when we work with agencies. Because what we don't want to see is real good representation of women, deep creative bench at copywriter, art director,
Yeah.
and then it's slimming in the ranks. So
Yeah,
yes,
that's
that
what
is
I'm
on our
asking.
radar. Thank you
Great.
for that question. Lots of questions.
That almost hit someone's head. Kind of similar to her question, have you further sort of dug into those creative director numbers to find out, by race or sexuality or disability or have you gone deeper into those numbers?
No, we have not yet. One of the reasons we asked about whether or not there were formalized networks for different communities is we wanted to understand how much support there was within agencies for it. When we do certification, we absolutely go deep on those questions. This survey was something that agencies did voluntarily over the phone, and it was confidential and anonymous, and we didn't go nearly as deep with them as we do with agencies going through certification, but we go super deep on all of these issues.
Do you plan on maybe next year going a little further with non-certification agencies?
Yeah, I mean, my goal is that now that people see this research and realize the importance of it, they'll be really generous with their time, even if they're not going through certification, so that we get a more nuanced, detailed read on the industry.
I think the other thing, too, building on that, is that a lot of it, this opened a great dialogue. When I was talking with a lot of the agencies, one of the things was when we first got on the phone, everyone was very excited to be talking about this, and they thought that they were really great and doing very, very well. And then as we got going through the questions, they were like, oh, there are some things that we can improve on. So while these are the numbers of where we are now, there's certainly, it has already started the conversations within those agencies to build on that and continue to improve. So,
yep. Mm-hmm. A lot of questions up in the front.
I'm holding this thing.
Okay.
I'm going to use it. So one thing that I keep hearing over and over again lately is now's a really good time to be a woman and a creative director. And I was thinking yesterday about how Tom Goodwin said that advertising is really great at doing gestural things. And so when people say that, it makes me feel a little bit like it's a trend. Like, you know how we had the maker spaces in agencies like 2 years ago, and now we have dusty 3D printers? How do we make sure, and like all these agencies are launching like diversity initiatives, and I'm like, how much of that is a true initiative and how much of that is a really great PR effort? So the question that I have is, how do we make sure that this is real and not just the latest trend?
Right. I appreciate that question. I think having sat in on certification efforts, we are aware that those numbers of women in creative mean nothing if the other things we're uncovering about their culture. And we do a really in-depth survey of all the employees about the sense of ambient belonging of working there. And I totally hear you. If that other number isn't right, if there isn't a sense that people are accepted and that they're happy to work there and they feel that they can talk in meetings, then it doesn't matter what the head count is. So yes, and those are the harder things to get at. So our goal is to bring as many agencies as possible through the certification program so we can get to that level of really understanding if there's a heartbeat in that agency to support this over the long term.
Hello, this is my first year here, very happy to be here. And I have a question. I'm like 18
There you
months
are.
in my first agency
Hi.
job, and it's going great. And it seems like everyone gets caught up in like the day-to-day. I don't want to say people don't care about these issues, so I'm going to say they get caught up in the day-to-day of their work, and they don't have the time to like really, truly think about these issues and bring change. And so how can someone who is very new to the agency, younger, not really like mid-level, not high up, how can I try to get people to be motivated and really care about these issues?
Yeah. Were you here for the 3 Cheers Award?
I was, yes.
Okay, did you see Ken that was honored?
Yes.
He's a great example of someone who's young and passionate, and he's in the right agency environment where they gave him a platform to bring people together in storytelling and film screenings and book readings. You don't have to be at a director level to make an impact in your agency, and that's why I was so enthused to have Ken up here receiving that award. He's absolutely making a mark in that agency environment as much as a CEO like Gene Freeman. Like, he belonged on the stage with Gene Freeman. So I would say to you, throw out something that is the conversation you want to have. I started this conference because I wanted to have a conversation that no one was having. So I hosted it. And now look at it. You know, there were other people that wanted to talk about this.
Woo. Oh, these people also have questions. Over there.
I noticed the men are being very silent. Are there any questions from men in the audience? No? Okay. Sorry.
So my question is about talking to HR about the gender pay gap. You said that everyone kind of has the right to talk to the HR director and ask what the salary is for a position. What is your advice for approaching that conversation, and do you have any further advice for what happens if they're not receptive to it?
I would say bring this white paper in with you and say, I just came back from this event. I'm so excited that the industry is doing this as best practices. What is our plan?
Hi.
Hi.
I'm just wondering if you could share a little more information about your data set. How many agencies does this represent? And then more specifically, what was your response rate of the people you reached out to?
I think the response rate was 100% because they reached out to us. I think there were about 40 agencies that went through this. But we have statistics about the number of employees it represents, and it's...
They were as small as under 35 and as big as over 2,500.
Right, so we did like an aggregate of how many people are represented in that research, and it's significant. But again, this is the beginning of a growing data set. 80,000 employees are represented in these findings.
Hi, I'm going to speak for Chief Diversity Officer.
Yay!
Yay! There are few things that I think are going on with those kind of roles. The first is I do not think that there is an adequate understanding of the level of skills, leadership abilities, and I think a broad view and understanding of business is required for that role. I think it's just misunderstood and probably under-respected.
I would totally agree with
within this industry. And sometimes I meet with people who are new at the role, and sometimes agencies that do have people wind up turning to the person who's just really passionate and throwing them into a role that is extremely complex and touches every aspect of a business. So that's one thing. I think more insights on what the role could be and should be in terms of delivering value. Now, in some organizations, the role is really about recruitment. Having worked at diversity, specifically in this industry for over 20 years, what I've seen, my view, is that it is more important for our agency brands to be out there recruiting and meeting people. Because if it's only the role of the diversity officer, those key relationships do not happen. It becomes this matter of passing along links, to a creative person's website, and then who the hell else knows what happens with it. But I'm really glad that you made it this far with the research, and that there's an opportunity to have the kind of conversations that we're starting to have now.
Thank you. And I agree. It occurs to me as you're speaking that why don't we do a recurring feature on our blog that goes to our 30,000 person community where we profile chief diversity officers and you see the complexity of skills that is. So I will commit. Do you want to be on that? You want to be the first person profiled? Sure. Okay. We are out of time. I'm super excited where this conversation is going to next. Lisa Stromberg, our COO, is going to be announcing the very first agencies that have cleared this high bar we have set. She'll explain a little bit more about the methodology of our certification program and then have a very big announcement about agencies that deserve to be applauded here today. Lisa.